Thank you very much for having me. I feel quite privileged to be part of the lineup of speakers this morning, particularly possibly as the only public servant. My story is not terribly much different to your story, just in a different context. We have been put into the system as what we call positive disruptors, and we're learning quite a lot, and it's a hard role to play, and you have to be incredibly resilient, and you just need to keep going to work every day. I just really quickly want to give you the definition of social investment from the government's perspective. So I've been in this job a year as the lead of the social investment unit. When I arrived a year ago, I was given this definition. The government had already determined this. I looked at it and thought, it's not very people-based, it's quite technical, because under that is a whole lot of things about data and measurement, as you can imagine. In fact, I'll go on to the next slide. But it is about investing in services we know to work, and it's really important that we know to work piece. And so while that's quite a technical definition, social investment can be applied in a number of ways. So at the moment, you'll hear the Minister of Finance talk a lot about vulnerable populations, particular interest to him. He's very interested in opening this all up to much more beyond government. He's looking for many more non-government players in this space. He's very keen on that. We're looking to the person, not the agency. So again, another one of the reasons we've been put into place. And it really is about getting much smarter, and it is using data. I get a lot of criticism about being very data and dollars driven. But it's more than that. They're inputs to get the outcomes that we're after. And he's also very clear that he's after outcomes, and we need to move the focus away from inputs and outputs, which is what government agencies do at the moment. So we've been set up in the system. Some of you might have seen an article earlier in the week, Colin James, and the one sentence I like in that article, he starts off with saying the social investment unit, and it's a line I trot out quite a lot. So my day job is in the Ministry of Social Development. That's where I used to work. I'm seconded from there to this unit. We sit in the Treasury. I have a State Services Commission address. I actually report to the Social Sector Board, which is a board of about 12 chief executives, not the Minister of Finance, but he is my lead minister. We are the face, I think, of the new public service. We have to start doing things differently. And we've put some noise into the system. I was talking to Brendan Boyle, who's the chief executive of MSD, is my boss, I guess. I was talking to him last week, and he said, I'm watching with interest this new model. He said, I'm getting a lot of noise about you. But he said, we're letting that play out. We're going to see how it goes. And it did help. I have to brag about this. We did get a satisfaction rating from the minister the other day of 90%. So actually, yeah, exactly. He couldn't really say a lot. So I just want to talk a little bit about the unit and what we've been set up to do, and then I do want to give my reflections on what we're seeing from a Wellington perspective about how we would like to see things start to change in Wellington to make sure for better services at the front line. So we have been set up to advance and embed a systematic approach to social investment. At the moment, a lot of our activity is around championing the approach, because it really makes me nervous. I came in with Jodie this morning, she goes, right, how are you getting on? I said, we're doing fine. We've put a lot of noise into the system. A lot of people in Wellington, and actually beyond Wellington, are talking about us, but we still haven't quite got there in terms of delivering product. We've got a very product-focused minister. And Jodie said to me, so when will it look different on the front line? And I think a lot about that, because actually it's a long-run game that we're here for. And people often ask me, I said, we've been set up, I think, to change Wellington, and we will change Wellington, but that's not a good enough answer. It does have to reflect right through the front line. We do need to see services change. We need to know that those services are making a difference, and we need to partner much more widely, I think, than we do now. But anyway, at the moment, we're creating a lot of noise. We're starting to partner with agencies, so we're going into agencies, working alongside, particularly at the moment, within the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Education, to what does it look like to take a social investment approach to some really big issues like diabetes, the education funding review, what does it look like to fund education services differently, things like disability services as well. So we're working alongside them. At the same time, these two parts down the bottom are of great interest to our minister. So we're building an infrastructure that allows agencies to work off the infrastructure to do social investment, I guess, more efficiently. So we're not getting the duplication. We're starting to see that change right across all of the agencies. Our vision is, and I am just going to read this bit out because again the vision that we've worked through with the Cabinet. So to improve the lives of New Zealanders by investing in services we know to work. The Minister does not back away from managing long-term costs of government. He's the Minister of Finance. And I spend a lot of time with him. It really is the secondary thing, because he thinks if you can get better outcomes for people, it will improve the government's books further down the line sometime, but that is not his immediate focus. He very much is about the services. What we've said, in order for the government to achieve that, our job is to support them to take a collective approach, and I'll come to that, to investing in what works. So that is lifting up out of those agency boundaries and thinking about people as opposed to work and income or child, youth and family, health and so forth. We set ourselves up as an agency neutral engine room, that's what we call ourselves, that are just driving and coordinating a social investment approach. So this is my last slide. So I just want to talk about what's different and what we're starting to see be different. I think at the moment, I was talking at another forum last week, mainly measurement people. I think at the moment we have a unique set of conditions. I don't know how long they're going to last, but while we've got them, we need to make the most of them. We have a very supportive minister. He's very senior in the Cabinet. He is taking his colleagues with him. We have a real focus now on taking an evidence-based approach to how we do things. We've got a real focus on bringing more people in. Gosh, in the last year, I have met more people and more agencies than I've ever met. I've learnt more, I think, in the last year of my time in the public service I have in the last 20 years. And it's been an enormous privilege. And a friend of mine here, Gail's here today, and I've talked to her about this, because one of the biggest questions in my head is that in the last year, I have seen and talked to people about so many pockets of innovation and brilliant stuff going on. Why haven't we seen it tip the system yet? And I think, so what the minister talks about, some people don't like this word, but I get what he means, is we need to industrialise this. We need to lift it up and somehow get all of us working together to tip the system. And we have a role to play in that, and we want to work alongside others who also have a role. And one of the reasons it's great to be here today. We try to move from that agency view to a lifetime view. We need to get away from the silo view of how we provide services. We need to get away from spending money to thinking about what it means to invest money. As I said, focus on the evidence, continually learning, not having a contract for 3 years and then going in 3 years' time, well, look, that didn't really work. The ability to know all the time that what's working or not working, so we can be changing things all the time. And as I said, positive disruptor, the new public sector, and quite frankly, Chief Executive is just going to have to get used to that. And we take that role very, very seriously. So I don't ask permission ever, but I spend a lot of time at the moment apologising. I was talking to a very good support person of mine, Richie Poulton, for those of you who know Richie, the other day. I was telling him about that. I thought he was going to tell me off, but he said, Dorothy, you just need to stop apologising. So that maybe will be the next step. One of the exciting things, so we're doing some things like we are building a data exchange so we can allow much more data to flow around the system. We've got an enormous gap at the moment as we don't provide to providers or collect from providers good data. So we want to close that gap. We're doing some analysis to see what it looks like to actually look at outcomes for people across agencies rather than just within agencies. So we're doing some work at the moment around what outcomes are families and social housing getting beyond just housing outcomes? What does it look like to get a health outcome and an education outcome? That starts to take us into our investment advice function, because what we'd like to be able to do is say to government, actually, don't put all your money back into your social housing pot, you need it over in your education pot if you really want to get all the outcomes that you're after. That's probably the most contentious part of our work program at the moment. Agencies very nervous about us stepping into that independent advice role. It was the most contentious part of our work program. We now have a new part. About a month ago, I was very lucky to go with a couple of colleagues to the UK to look at what they're doing around outcomes-based commissioning in the UK, because we kind of had this view that they were doing much better than us. No, they're not. They're doing some cool things, but it's very ad hoc, it's quite small, and I think they've learned a lot of hard lessons. And when I got back, the minister said, so I sent you all the way to the UK only to find that they're not doing better than us. I said, yes, but we cannot repeat the mistakes that they have made. And I think one of the things is what we provide is the centralised platform out of which many things can come, so you're not getting duplication of effort and things like that. So we've just inherited a new program of work, we're just still working it up, around what does it look like to build the common commissioning tools and guidance for agencies so we get much better about outcomes-based commissioning. And in that, we're hoping to partner around getting some non-government money, because look, I hope there's not many government departments in the room, but they are big machines. You don't turn those big machines around really quickly. They won't do risky stuff. I get stories all the time, as does the Minister, of people going into ministries trying to get maybe some funding to try something different, and if you don't fit a box, you're just not going to get the funding. So how do we go around that? And how do we get some funding that we can do some risky things, prove they work, and then the deal has to be they move into baseline. Because one of the problems I think we've got is that I think ministers are prepared to let things go. One, if you can prove they're not working, but they can understand what's coming down the pipeline to replace it. So what does that look like when you start to create that pipeline? So where do you test some risky things so you can move other things out so we can start to tip the system? It is a long run game. We're going to be here for a long time doing this, or at least I hope we are. The other thing we want to look at, again, one of the key messages I heard in the UK as well was we've got to look differently at our contracting. What would it look like to have a contract on a handshake? Don't know. We're going to test a one-page contract. Let's start there. But again, we just need to start mixing some things up. That's what we've been put in the system to do. I think we have that unique set of conditions. We can't do it on our own. We need to contribute into things that your organisations are doing, because I think it's a collective approach that's going to be required.